I don't know, different strokes for different folks. People get different things out of it. And maybe that little social status thing is more important to them than the actual surfing. But I think that's obviously short-term thinking, because, and it's a hollow chase that you're after, because you're never going to be satisfied with that. And you shouldn't be, I don't think you should be spending too much time pursuing things for the approval of others, especially like surfing is kind of a solitary pursuit, right? You're the one that's experiencing it, and you're the one that's riding the wave, and you're the one that's having that moment and feeling it. If you're doing it for what other people think about you, I think you're missing the point.
Well, welcome back to the Surf Mastery Podcast. I am your host, Michael Frampton. Today's guest is Matt Parker from Album Surf. But before we get into that, a couple of housekeeping items. Firstly, Surf Mastery has a new website, and included on that, on the front page, is a free PDF download outlining my top 5 insights from the show and the last 8 years or so of focusing on improving my own surfing. So go ahead and download that puppy. Onto the show. Today's guest, like I said, is Matt Parker from Album Surf. Matt is a surfer from Southern California, and he started shaping surfboards from his garage back in 2001. And now Album Surf is one of the largest surfboard companies around. They specialize in all types of boards. And let me read a little quote from Matt's website, which sort of summarizes the way he thinks about surfboards. This is a quote from Matt. "The surfboard is a constant blending of curves and how they interact with the water. Making those curves feel comfortable, like an extension of your feet and your mind, is so interesting. There shouldn't be any rules about what a surfboard looks like." I love that quote. And you would have seen there's so many pros that when they aren't surfing on tour, they end up on these boards, including one of my favorite surfers of all time, Margot. Yes, one of the best free surfers around, Brendan Marginson. Well worth a follow on Instagram as well. He started riding Matt's boards. Anyway, without further ado, I shall fade in my conversation with Matt Parker from albumsurf.com.
How are things in New Zealand?
Things are going swimmingly.
It always is there. You live in the prettiest place on earth. How could it not?
Yeah, you're not wrong. Although I have to admit, I do miss California.
Have you spent time out here before? Have you lived out here, or just?
Yeah, I lived in Point Doom, Malibu for 4 years.
Oh, cool.
So I was obviously in a little bit of a bubble, surfing Little Doom every day. But the weather alone in Southern California, I kind of feel like it was a bit monotonous after 4 years there. I almost missed winter, but having come back to New Zealand and actually experiencing the 4 seasons, I take California any day.
Yeah, it's big news when it rains here. It's like,
yeah, no one can drive in the rain in California.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
And then, of course, you're not supposed to go in the water either.
So whereabouts in New Zealand are you? What part are you at? Like, where do you surf at and all that?
I'm in a place called Hawke's Bay, which is on the east coast of the North Island. There's nowhere really famous surf-wise around here. The surf's pretty average around here, actually. We have a massive continental shelf, so the swell comes in with almost no energy left in it, unless it's a certain period that seems to sneak through. So yeah, around here is not so good for surf, to be honest. I came back here to, raise the kids and yeah, that sort of thing.
But it's pretty drivable though, right? I mean, you can get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's, if you're willing to drive, then yeah, you can get waves. Fully get good waves almost every day. In New Zealand, actually, if you're willing to drive and put up with a little bit of weather.
Mm-hmm. Not afraid of a little wind, right? Find it blowing the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's another big thing is, I remember in Southern California, so many days there's just no wind.
Yeah.
where you don't really get that here. In New Zealand, maybe the first 2 hours of the day, there's not much wind, but you'd never get a day where it's glassy until midday, like in Southern California. That's rare here.
Yeah, that's like the prototypical dreamy Southern California fall day where it's kind of a little bit offshore in the morning and kind of glassy and nice and sunny and warm all day with fun combo swell. That's kind of the ideal. It's like that a lot. I'm down in San Clemente. It's pretty clean down here too. We live like where there's like a little valley kind of that kind of keeps the wind cleaner here. I don't know if it's just protected a little bit from some of the, more beach break spots up in Huntington and Newport, all those spots. But
yeah, no, I've spent a little bit of time down your way as well. Surfed lowers, and I got to interview Archie on my way down there, and I spent some time. I love surfing Swamis and just that whole Encinitas area. Spent some time down there.
Right?
Yeah. And part of what I wanted to talk about today was obviously surfboards. But I remember I interviewed Devin Howard, and I got to surf with Devin, and I was surfing this, I think it was a Stu Kenson 9.4, and I would just paddle right out the back as far as you can at Little Doom, and surf it like San-O, almost just catch the swell and just get long, big swooping rides. And Devin's like, you should just be on a glider. And I was like, what's a glider? And then so I just went out and bought an 11-foot Josh Hall, and that's pretty much all I surf all of the time.
Then you went even further out. You went even like another 100 yards out and catch it even out the back. That's amazing.
Yeah, and then I'm always swapping around boards, but that 11-foot board just taught me so much about surfing. Just the sheer volume and weight and size of the board. Just you have to think about reading the waves so differently, and about the space around you with other people so differently. And then when you finally do jump back on a board, a short board or whatever, I found it so much easier and more fun and easier to sort of be present after having learned how to surf such a big surfboard. Have you experienced anything similar with playing around with lots of different boards?
Yeah, I obviously I make boards, and so I'm always riding something different. It's rare that I ride the same board 2 days in a row. And so I'm very used to like the initial paddle out where I can't try too hard. You know what I mean? I kind of have to just feel what the board is going to do and just kind of be open to what it feels like once I'm dropping in and just kind of riding the wave. And so it makes me, it's just it's a good little lesson every time, because you can't force it. And so you remain a little bit relaxed and not try to do too much. And then you kind of feel it out, and every wave is kind of like you're learning a little bit more about what the board wants to do and what line it wants to take, and trying to figure out where the gas pedal is. And so that's like the discovery part of surfing for me, because I tend to surf the same place every day, and it's a point break down by near lowers, and it's kind of a similar wave, but it's kind of a section-y point break that offers some variety, but it's the same place. I'm surfing in the same spot all the time. And so the variety of boards just kind of changes up it kind of removes expectations sometimes. I think sometimes if you have a board you've ridden a ton, and you're kind of like, this is the kind of surfing I want to go do, and these are the turns I'm going to do or whatever. And when you're surfing a little bit more blind to what the board is going to allow you to do, it just kind of keeps you from having expectations. And then you're kind of, you just find fun in different ways and new experiences every time you surf. So,
I think that really good top level surfers are doing that on a much more refined and accurate level, because they're always so close to where the wave is breaking. They're so in the source, and they're feeling all those little bumps and nooks, and obviously those sorts of boards at that speed are ridiculously sensitive. So if they're not tuned in to that, it's just not going to happen. Whereas you and I, surfing bigger boards a little further away from the power source, we can get away with not being tuned in. But when we do,
their awareness level is so next level, so high, of like what the little nuances, and they can feel a lot of. They can't always communicate that verbally, but they definitely know what they're feeling and experiencing in a different way than most regular people are.
Yeah, you know what I found that's really interesting is all of the pros. Well, not all of them. A lot of the pros, when you see them out free surfing or when they take a break off tour, then they're not riding high performance shortboards. You know, Josh Kerr is a great example. Even Steph Gilmore and Kelly Slater with Fireways are just riding different boards. As soon as there's not a camera and a judge looking at them, they're like, "I'm on this board."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I go down to the local beach and it's waist high and onshore and it's 11 seconds and there's people out there on toothpicks pumping and getting angry. But even the pros, when they're surfing good waves, they're not on those high performance shortboards. Are you seeing a similar trend, like overall in Southern California?
Yeah. I mean, well, specifically with everybody that all the guys and gals I make boards for, no one that rides for us really does contest surfing. Most everyone's just kind of free surfing, and so they're definitely on the track of surfing whatever feels good and experiencing a lot of different things. But yeah, Josh is a perfect example. I don't think he's touched a thruster since his last heated pipe, honestly. Wow. When he retired, and that was probably 5 years ago or something like that. Even in good waves, in every kind of wave, whether he's in Indo or wherever it is, he's always riding something different. And I think, obviously, like high-performance shortboards surf amazing. We all love to watch that surfing. I love watching contests and, the sport of it all. It's always exciting and entertaining and all that. But I think that type of board directs you to one type of surfing. There's, like everyone's trying to kind of surf the ideal way that board kind of pushes you to, and the judging and the contest structure is kind of positioned around that ideal as well. And so I think when you remove that box that you're trying to operate in, and you don't have to do the same turns and all that, you're just freed up to do whatever you want to do. That's always going to be a more fun option. And for me personally, I, as someone who makes boards, it's really fun. That's my favorite thing, is to see people that can surf at a world-class level, see them surf a lot of different boards and see the different places those boards can go when it's put under the feet of very, very talented people. Because for the most part, the most of surf media, most surf contests, you see these very high-level surfers riding very similar type of equipment. So,
yeah, I've always had this analogy of, in terms of car racing, whereas the pros in a contest, they're in a finely tuned Formula One that's customized for their style, right? And then for some reason, we want to go race around the local racetrack and we think we need to be in one of those cars. And yeah, sure, that when the average driver is in a high performance car, yes, you can drive it around the track, but man, it's going to be bumpy, it's going to be shaking. If you're not constantly turning the car, it's just not going to be as fun as getting in a V8 supercar that's nowhere near as fast or fine-tuned, but is it's got a little more give in it, still goes fast. So that's what I'm wondering. You see these pros, when they're surfing outside of a contest, they don't necessarily want to be in a finely tuned Formula One. They just want to be in a V8 supercar and just have a little less pressure and a little more give. How does that analogy stack up for you, the car racing one?
Well, to me, surfing really is about the feeling, right? And like the tactile feeling of like driving a car that's fast and that wants to go, and that you're feeling it. And there's a little bit of like, you're not gonna crash right away. Like a regular driver, if they went behind an F1 car, they're probably gonna crash pretty quick because it's just can't handle it, right? It's too technical to drive, all that kind of stuff. So you get in something that has better feel, but it is about the feeling. And, ultimately that's what we're chasing every time we surf. That's why we want to get another wave, is because you want to get that feeling again. And so the same with the pros that can surf at the highest level. They're chasing the feeling. The contest is like the job side of it. It's ticking the box. I feel amazing to win and do all that. But if they're freed from that, they're chasing the feeling of going fast and finding a tube and not having to fit in as many turns as they need to just to get the score, but to actually do the turn where the wave is allowing them to, or not, or just ride the wave. So that makes sense.
Yeah. Because I'm always dumbfounded when you see so many surfers spending so much time and money on taking these high performance. They watch Stab in the Dark and they want to buy the latest version of the 10 shortboards that they already own. It really doesn't make much sense to me. And I think things are changing, but there certainly is still a large percentage of surfers that fit in that category. Do you think it's trending the other way with companies like yourself, and even Channel Islands are broadening their range of boards?
I think for me, it definitely is the best time to be alive to be a surfer, because you have more options nowadays than you ever have in the past, and you really can ride anything. When I was young, as a teenager in the 90s surfing, it really was everyone kind of had the same board. I rode the same board no matter the conditions. It was like a 6'3", 18 and a half, 2 1/4 rockered out shortboard, no matter what. If it was 1 foot, if it was 6 foot, whatever. So nowadays you really do, I think everyone's kind of experienced oh yeah, I can have a little bit more of a diverse quiver, and it's okay if I'm riding a fish one day, or I'm riding like a little stretched out twin another day, or if I'm riding a shortboard one day or whatever. It's there's a little bit more versatility and variety, and so it's a great time to be alive, to be a surfer in that way. I think I just think there's just less rules about it, more enjoyment.
Yeah. I guess the impetus of the show is education and inspiration for better surfing, really. And I guess when I take on a client myself personally, that's one of the first things I'll say to them is why are you on that board? This isn't, you're not surfing double overhead barrels. That's what that board's made for. Just try.
Well, I think I've said this before, but I think a lot of just the culture of surfing is a little bit everyone wants to look competent, right? And so a lot of surfing culture is the perception that you put out there, right? I'm the cool guy, I got the right board, I'm not a kook, I'm wearing the right trunks, or I've got the right wetsuit, and I've got the right traction pad, and whatever it is, I've got the cool label. This is what I'm, because a lot of people are more concerned with how others perceive them in the lineup, because sometimes, how you're perceived in the lineup gives you status and gives you, if you're competent, you can you get more waves and you get a little bit more respect from people around you. And so there's a little bit of a game that people play in trying to project competency and a cool factor, and I'm not a kook. And so sometimes people put too much weight on that, and they're more concerned with what they look like on the beach or in the car park than the enjoyment they're actually getting out of it themselves. Are you actually having fun? You mentioned the guys that are flapping around and having a miserable time. There's always people out in the water that are having, you kind of wonder sometimes, do you actually, what are you actually getting out of this? Do you actually enjoy what you're doing? And I don't know, different strokes for different folks. People get different things out of it. And maybe that little social status thing is more important to them than the actual surfing. But I think that's obviously short-term thinking, and it's a hollow chase that you're after, because you're never going to be satisfied with that. And I don't think you should be spending too much time pursuing things for the approval of others, especially surfing is kind of a solitary pursuit, right? You're the one that's experiencing it, and you're the one that's riding the wave, and you're the one that's having that moment and feeling it. If you're doing it for what other people think about you, I think you're missing the point, so.
Yeah. Well, I definitely fitted in that category for a while.
We all do at some point, in a little bit. We all do, everyone, like I said, everybody who surfs wants to look competent. Kelly Slater doesn't want to be a kook. He wants to be the cool guy in the lineup. We all kind of have that feeling to a certain degree.
And there's something to be said, surfing that high performance shortboard in all types of conditions, you will develop a very intimate relationship with that surfboard. And when the waves do turn on, you're going to be pretty used to it. And then, you're probably going to have a better surf on that day. But was there a point in your surfing life where that changed, like where you started riding different boards, more volume, etc.?
Yeah, like I said, I grew up I started surfing in the late 80s, and then through the 90s. I was a teenager in the early 90s. And back then it was really about like just being competent enough and just riding what everybody else rode. And that was really all that was available, was just kind of your standard shortboards for, I guess for me as like a general public, not in any, I didn't have any. My dad surfed a little bit when he was young, but I didn't come from like a long line of family surfing and all that kind of stuff. And so probably I started getting more curious about surfboards. And that's kind of what led me into shaping a little bit, is that I was interested. You get back then, this is pre-internet really, but you would get just see different little videos, or you'd see different things that were just like, like that looks fun. That looks like more fun. I was surfing Newport Beach. It's 2-foot closeouts most of the time. It's not good. It's, it's hard. Like surfing is hard out there, and you're riding equipment that's bad. So you just have a lot of frustrating sessions, and you just like, there's got, you would see videos, you'd see guys in good waves. And so that was always like, I was interested in trying different boards to get a different experience level. I was like competent enough, but I was by no means pro or anything like that. I was good enough out in the lineup to get waves and to surf them fine, but it was not. But I always felt like those boards held me back too, just the normal boards, because they kind of, you just have, like, it can't be this frustrating all the time. So the interest in different boards, so I would go to different shops, and I would want to like get a board that was different, and I could never really find one. I could never really find what I was looking for. And then even when I would order custom boards, from like local shapers, you would try to explain what I had in my brain, what I was like trying to go for, and it was never it was like, it was probably my fault for not communicating it clearly what I was really after, but it never was it. And so I was in design school and art school and taking all these like sculpture and drawing and painting classes and stuff, and so it was just kind of a natural extension to get a blank and some tools and kind of experiment and just try to make something without any restrictions of what it had to look like, because I was just fooling around, So that was probably the interest, and that was probably at the time when like things were coming more online, and you had more access to just different things other people were doing, and so you could kind of see, the world was kind of opened up as far as like, oh, there's like other shapers and all these places making different things, and there are a lot of cool things out there that I just hadn't really experienced, and I had never tried or felt or seen in person, but like it just kind of expanded what was possible, and the interest level in surfing really grew. My fun level expanded too, because it was like everything was opened up a little bit more.
And then it sounds like the birth of Album Surfboards was quite organic. You saw essentially a gap in the market, right?
Yeah. Well, initially, for years, I was shaping boards with no intention of it being a thing, being a business or anything. It was more, I just wanted to try different things, and the creation part of it was really fun, like just designing and trying something, and the tactile thing of making something with your hands and then seeing it finished and then going and writing it was very addicting. It was very, just kind of opened my mind a lot. And it made the exploration process of trying different boards satisfying, even if the surf was bad. So in the old days, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and you're trying to just like do all the moves you see in the videos, and you're having frustrating sessions because the waves aren't good most of the time, and you're riding boards that aren't good, surfing wasn't as fun. And so when I was making boards and exploring and trying these different types of shapes, just going out and seeing that it worked and making it like get down the line and get the feeling of speed that I was kind of envisioning with it was satisfying. So the waves didn't have to be good, and my surfing didn't have to be amazing. And I was still like very satisfied and validated and surf stoked. I was like inspired to go make another board and surf more because I wanted to try out these things that I was playing around with. But I did that for years, hundreds, probably a couple thousand boards before it was even like a real business. I was a designer by trade. And so I was doing like graphic design work, and that was kind of what my employment or job focus was. And just making boards was like this just kind of creative art project on the side that I could just have fun with. And I could usually like sell one to pay for another one, and find it, put it up on like in the used rack at a shop and sell like consignment. Just turn over enough to learn the craft without any pressure of having to be a professional at doing it.
Yeah. So did your entrepreneurial journey begin with the Album agency?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I was running my own business and just doing like client design work that way. And the building the surfboards and kind of treating it like my own little micro brand was kind of also an extension of the graphic design side. So I was able to kind of like, you're doing work for clients in industries that you're not really interested in, and I was like, here's a chance for me to play around with design and create it and kind of like make this fun little like, brand for fun without any, strings attached.
It
was pretty.
And what inspired you to make the leap to turn the surfboards into the main business?
There was just, I was doing it at night. So I would be working like in the day, client work and designing and getting projects done. And then I'd go home, have dinner with the family, and then put the little kids to bed and go in my garage or go in my backyard and shape at night. And I was doing this a lot. So I was working a lot. I was working a full-time plus job and then shaping on the side. And demand just kind of like, word just kind of would get out. I was making boards that were probably interesting and that resonated with other people that they hadn't seen either. And there was something unique about what we were doing. And so the age of when we are, in this last 15 years where things are just more accessible and people can find you easier, it just kind of awareness of what I was doing got out there probably faster than if it was 30 years ago. No one, the people in my little community would have known, but then people would just want to order a board. And then that just kind of gets to this point where the demand kind of exceeds like the time on the other side. And so just kind of realized like others, I think, and by that point too, I'd made enough boards and had enough awareness of like just the surf industry and kind of where things were that you could kind of see opportunities or openings in the market. And like here we have something different to say, and there's people that are interested in what we're doing. So yeah, let's like make a little run at it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned supply and demand. I mean, that's why business exists. So obviously the culture is changing. People are more interested in different shapes and I would say a higher level of longevity. You get much more longevity out of a surfboard like yours as opposed to a pop-out white shortboard.
For sure. I think the other thing too was I made some boards for some good surfers, some pros and things like that, and they worked really well. And so there was kind of like this validation of like, oh, okay. Like, I mean, I knew like I was competent enough to know that they worked for my level of surfing, and I was having an amazing time and having fun, and my friends were. But then when I made some boards for guys that could surf really well, and then they had more fun on that too. It was kind of like, oh, maybe there really is something a little different that we're doing that does work and makes sense. So like we should follow that path, because there's something there that hasn't been tapped into yet, and it resonates with guys that can surf at the highest level. So we should kind of pursue that.
That leads me into a question I have about, well, let's get into your designs a little bit. So I remember I first got into surfing fish surfboards. I had a Christensen fish that I used to surf a lot, and then I remember one day the waves turned on, and rising swell, and next thing you know, I'm surfing almost double overhead waves, and I find, man, to be able to surf that fish in those real good solid waves, I would have to move my feet closer to the inside rail to do a bottom turn, and then I go up to do a top turn and it would just slide. I was like, this is not the right surfboard. But at the same time, I don't want to be surfing a high performance shortboard. And then you look at someone like Josh Kerr surfing the Twinsman, or the Insanity, I think it is, in the Mentawais, in double overhead waves, getting barreled and doing airs on what is, I guess, hybrid alternative high performance shape. Now, is that the kind of board that only he can ride in those waves, or is it designed so that anyone can have a good time in those overseas waves?
Well, I think there's a misnomer to me. There was always a misnomer in the marketplace that like high performance shortboards are for like real surfing, and alternative boards are just, for fun or whatever. And I think if you look at like the trajectory of surfboards from, longboards, logs, up into the early 60s, mid 60s, to how quickly it progressed and like revolutionized like what people were riding in such a short window of time. There's so many like design steps along the way and different types of boards along the way that like didn't get their full fleshing out, right? So there was a lot of ideas in that time, I mean, twin fins is a perfect example of that. Like where twin fins were really at like their height from, 78 to 81 or something like that, or something, 77, like what is it, 3 or 4 years or something like that, where twin fins were like the, high performance little hot dog board that people were riding. And that was with kind of like, I mean, nowadays, like that window of time is a blink, 3 years. It's like, most of us have boards that we've surfed for 5, 6, 8 years, you know what I mean? So 3 years is nothing. And so, you just see like, the fins they were riding, they didn't have enough time to develop the right fins for them. And they didn't have enough time to think about fin placement and designing the rail shape and bottom contour to fit like where that goes, and like what type of wave that needs to be surfed in, and what blanks were available, and different glassing, layups and all that. It was just fast. And so I've always felt like alternative boards, twin fins are not like a cop out of like, I'm just going to screw around. Like it's like any sort of design, any place I'm going to take a surfboard, there's like an intended performance or design intention for that concept. And so the concept is meant to perform at a high level. It's just a different way of doing it. And so like with Josh, those boards, like he has more fun and more freedom, more speed. They're easier to turn on a twin fin, And so if you can make them and design it to be able to handle any type of wave, they're certainly obviously capable and validated by him and others in those types of waves. And so it's just a matter of backing the concept, and then proving the concept, and then iterating the idea and the concept enough to prove it out and refine it and get it right so that it actually does work in those types of ways. But I think sometimes when shapers or whatever, if they're focused on one thing, if they're focused on high performance shortboards, their version of a twin fin or a fish is like is not the main design intention. It's almost like it's like a spin-off of their shortboard idea. And it's like they take their shortboard idea and they kind of fatten it a little bit and just put 2 fins in it instead of 3, and maybe make it a swallowtail, and we'll call it like the alternative board. And to me, I'm more focused on the concept of a high performance twin fin that maybe surfs better or is more of an advantage than a shortboard would be in those waves. And so it's like, how would I design it? Where do the fins go? What does that mean for the bottom contour? Like, what dimensions are we talking about? And so there's the funnest thing about surfing is there's so many variables in the types of waves, in the swell, in the wind conditions, and the interval, and where you're surfing, the type of surfing you want to do. And so there's kind of like these endless rabbit holes of design and conceptual thinking you can go down in creating whatever. And it's so fun too, because I think surfers should be very grateful and realize how fortunate that we all are, that we participate in this pursuit where we can make all sorts of different things all the time. If you're driving or you're skiing or whatever it is, it's much more difficult you're not going to go make 10 different concepts of skis that you're going to go try out every different time you go surfing. But with the surfboards, you can make, I can go surf today, have a session out there, get the pros and cons of the board I'm riding. I come back in, design something based off that idea, shape it that day, glass it, and be surfing something next week. Something that I was intending to design for. It's just a cool thing that we all kind of, and surfing's small enough, surf industry is small enough that if you're motivated, like, you can have access to any of that. It's relatively, for what that is, for the access to that kind of R&D and design, like options for different types of boards, it's relatively not super cost prohibitive. If you're into it, if you're committed to it, it's affordable enough. You can,
Yeah, I think the importance of a quiver is, yeah, I don't know whether that's why you chose the name album, but, it makes me think of a good album like Pearl Jam 10, which is 10 really good songs, all with different moods, but still the same album. You can sit down and listen to the album, or you can sit down and listen to one song. And I almost see a surfboard quiver is like that. It's, have 10 surfboards that are for you, but for the different types of moods and the waves that you're surfing. But it does make me think, because there's also that Swiss Army knife surfboard that kind of does pretty good in most waves and tends to excel in sort of head high good waves.
For sure.
What's that surfboard for you within your quiver? What would that Swiss Army knife board be?
Ooh, that would probably be like a board I would travel with, right? Because you're something that you would have, that you'd want to have versatility for. And that would probably be like Victor's model, like a Bongia, which is like a quad, asymmetrical quad. It's kind of a hybrid. It's definitely a performance board, but it definitely is easier to go fast, and it paddles a little bit better, and it turns super easy, and it's versatile in a lot of kinds of waves. It'd probably be something like that. Honestly, if you have the right mindset, though, almost any board in your quiver should be able to fill that slot, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
It's all, there's sometimes we all do it where no matter what board you're surfing, people try to surf the same way, right? They have like this is the way I bottom turn, this is my turn I do, and this is my little re-entry I do, and you'll watch them out there, and it doesn't matter if they're riding their Fisher or mid-length or shortboard or whatever it is, they kind of surf the same. And that's fine. That's totally fine. But I think it's good to be a little bit more open to what the board wants to do and the type of surfing that board is going to allow you to do, and how it might open up the kind of surfing you do and the enjoyment you get out of that kind of surfing, so that it makes you a little bit more versatile in what your approach is. Like Victor Bernardo, who rides for us, is a really good example of that. So I think a lot of times people, when they're building a quiver, they are a little bit too narrow in scope for what like range they're going for. Like it happens all the time where I'll have people that they want their fish and their shortboard and a twin fin and everything to kind of be all within like a little volume range. Like, here's my leader, here's the leader I ride, and my boards need to be within 30 to 31 and a half liters, and they try to fit like all their boards. And it's like, I think you're missing out if you're thinking about it in that way. So Victor is this perfect example because he's a young man, 26, 27 years old, highest level professional surfer, can surf as well as anybody in the world, competed on the QS, did all that stuff, right? But if you look at his quiver, it is like from 5.0 to 8.0 and everything in between. I mean, obviously he has access to a lot of boards, which helps. Which helps. It makes it easy to ride a lot of stuff. But still, his mindset is like if you were just talking what volume he rides from 29 liters to 42 liters. You know what I mean? So his range is like, and these are all different types of what I would call performance boards. So even yesterday or this week, we were in Hawaii. He's still there right now, but we were on the North Shore this past week, and he was riding a 6.8 Bongia roundtail, which is like, normally his normal version is like a 5.8 or 5.9, and he was riding a 6.8 roundtail version that was plus volume. It was actually one of Brendan Margison's boards that Margot left there in Hawaii when Margot went back to Australia, and Victor took it out and got a couple amazing waves of pipe, on that board. And so it's just and definitely not limiting his performance, actually enhanced his performance, because it was something that unique that he wouldn't have maybe taken out normally, but it just kind of opened up his surfing. And I think if you remain a little bit more open to what the board wants to do and what the waves are asking you to do, you just have more fun.
Yeah.
Your surfing gets too. Like you were saying, just like it started, right? When you're riding the glider and then you go jump onto your shortboard, your surfing is better because your fundamentals are better. Your timing is a little different. Your mindset is a little different. So.
Yeah. I think every board you ride opens up. You have to read the waves a little differently and look for different lines. And like you said, your timing has to be better, or maybe it can be more lax, or you're looking for a different type of wave or whatever. So I think really it just helps you to read the ocean better. I think that's the main reason why different surfboards can improve your surfing when you jump back on your favorite board, because you're just reading the wave with more detail. It also, riding that glider changed my realization of how big and how fast of a section I can actually make, because those boards go ridiculously fast. And I surprised myself many times with what section I could get around, and that literally translated to surfing other boards. So, I'm going to try and make that section. I'm just going to get a bit lower and stay on the whitewash a bit longer, and lo and behold, surfing that big crazy board just had me making different types of waves and changing my whole perspective on reading the ocean. Sounds like
I agree with that.
Sounds like Victor needs to go longer as well.
He does. He rides bigger boards all the time. But I think the point of a quiver is to make you surf as much as possible. So no matter what the waves are, you have the right board to have fun that day. And that's really to me the thing that improves you as a surfer the most is water time. So if you're surfing a lot, if you're surfing more days than you're not, you're gonna get better. You read the ocean better. Your timing is better. your strength, your paddle strength is better. All that stuff kind of comes into play the more you surf. And so if you have a quiver that motivates you to want to surf and makes you kind of, no matter what the waves are, you're like, oh, I'm stoked to go out today because I have the right board and I'm going to have more fun. And you see those guys struggling and you're having fun and they're miserable. It's like, oh yeah, you made the right choice and you have the right board to just get out in the water a lot.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. That is the point of a quiver. So it's as simple as that. And you're right. I mean, the best thing that ultimately that you can do for your surfing is not only to surf more, but to surf more waves. And if you're on the right surfboard for the condition, you are going to catch more waves. When it's knee high here at my local point break and there's no one out, I'm literally giddy because I have an 11-foot Josh Hall and no one can compete with that. Because
how did you ship that thing to New Zealand? How did you get that board there? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I know. I filled a container with all of my stuff. So I've got my Wayne Rich 9.8 and everything here. So
awesome.
How would you, if I just ask you an open question, what is a surfboard?
Well, there's it's foam and fiberglass and resin and all that, right? But I think it's a tool to allow you to go ride waves. So whatever that is, comes in many forms. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's depending on a surfboard for pipeline like where we were at last week is not a surfboard for upper trestles where I surf most every other day. Very, very different tools for those different types of waves. And so I think it's a tool to get you to catch a wave and ride a wave.
Yeah. Simple. How would you describe your current relationship with surfing and the ocean, and how has it evolved over the years?
I surf a lot. To me, it's the most important thing in my job as a designer and shaper and surfboard manufacturer is being in the water as much as I can. So I surf 5 or 6 days a week, and it's kind of a like daily ritual of getting out there. And so I surf a lot. I'm 47 now, so I'm definitely past my peak of my best days are behind me as far as like strength and ability level and all that kind of stuff. But I definitely have more fun surfing now than I ever have in my life. And I get more enjoyment out of it, and I have better perspective on it. And so you just appreciate different things about sessions that you skip and you missed when you're young and immature. And so, with age comes wisdom. And so I definitely, I appreciate it. And every session I go out, you just have a better mindset for just appreciating like the opportunity to go out and surf. I live in a place and I have surfboards to ride, and there's waves most every day that are rideable. It's a real blessing. So I think that the mindset makes me appreciate it more now than ever. So,
yeah, I like that. I'm going to go back to, so we talked about the Swiss Army, the single board. What if you could choose 3 boards to travel with, or just to have? What would those 3 boards be?
It's funny because we're talking about quivers, right? And I'm actually like I don't have a great quiver because I don't have boards I hold on to that long. That's the problem for me, is that I'm always doing R&D and working on new models and new boards, and so it's ever changing. So my answer would probably if you asked me next month, it would probably be different than it would be a month ago. So it changes all the time. But if I was going to where we live, going down to Mexico, go down there all the time and surf the points, I would for sure take some form of a fish. I've been riding a version of Asher Pacey's Sunstone with a little hip, and I've been riding it as a quad a bunch lately, and I've been riding it with twin fin, like upright twin fins in the lead boxes and little small trailers in the quad trailer boxes, and been having a good old time on that. So I would definitely bring one of those. I would definitely bring like a bigger board, like a one of Margot's models in Vesper or a Delma, which is like a stretched out, kind of like a slot channel, concave Bonzer little bottom quad. I would definitely bring one of those. Those things can hang in good surf too, and they're like a really nimble, easy to turn for a big board. I'll ride those at 6.8 to 7.2 to 7.4, 7.6. I have an 8.0. I take out on that all the time. Definitely take that. And then I'd probably take something asymmetrical, some sort of like a disorder model, which is like my high performance asym, kind of like fully rail outlines shifted, and or a Bongia, like I was saying. It's probably something to at least like cover the bases.
Yep. Okay, cool. I'm taking a whale shark, a Vespa, and an Insanity.
It's good. That's a good call too. The whale shark would tick that glider box for you for sure.
Oh,
so cool.
I want one so bad. Just by reading the description, that's yeah.
When you're talking about that buildup of like that section, and you're just in so early, and the fun of those boards is that kinetic energy of like the speed building. Like you build the speed and maintain the speed and build the speed some more, and it's a very satisfying feeling. We make longboards, and I have fun longboarding, but I prefer, like if I'm riding a big board, I prefer a glider. I prefer a big twin, like a whale shark. I have a little bit more fun just because I probably surf more off the back foot than I do, walking the nose and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, same. Yeah, it's amazing if you're used to it and you get your timing right, you can step back on an 11-foot board and do a cutback. And it's so satisfying, and you're right. It's the maintenance of the momentum of one of those big boards is such an incredible feeling, and it's amazing what sections you can make. And I've had some of the longest rides ever.
I bet.
in what most people would seem as unmakeable waves, just by taking that high line and trusting it. It's it's an incredible feeling.
Riding gliders like its own form of riding a foil board. It's like in its own little category almost. Ride those boards, ride those waves that everyone else can really get into. Depth, length of ride is insane on those.
Yeah, and it's Joel Tudor says that's the ultimate goal, right? Is skip fry.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's the end game. But it's I've surfed that board in a few years ago. We had in Malibu, there's at Little Doom, there's an outer reef that breaks when you get those 18-second northwest swells. I took my glider out there, and it was double overhead barreling, and I was like, wow, maybe I shouldn't have this board out. But I managed to get such a high line and set the rail so early that I could just avoid the barrel and still catch the waves and have such a rad time. So there's such versatile boards too, if you know how to surf them.
Yeah, you're doing your own step-offs.
Basically.
It's like towed in out the back.
Yeah.
Almost just I would paddle that fast. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. You can paddle around so much. That's what I like about them so much too. Is you see a section over there, you can just paddle over to it. And
that board's gonna last you forever too. 20 years from now, you'll still be surfing that board. You'll have that thing forever.
Yeah,
which is special.
Yeah. Was that so? Obviously, it sounds like you have experience riding. Was that the inspiration for the whale shark riding gliders?
Yeah, just because, like I was saying, I'm not a longboarder that's walking the nose and go. I'm more into just trim and glide and that feeling. And obviously, you want to have a board that you can ride for us on those longboard days when it's really small and it's just soft and just little open faces. And so that was my preference, was to ride that style of board. And so it's just, for me, it's like an extension of the fish. Obviously, it's taking a 5-6 fish and making it 10-6. So same kind of principle a little bit for me. It's just putting it with a really long rail and a different, sort of rocker to fit that wave face.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a side note for listeners, if you haven't ridden a longboard or a log, don't go out and buy a glider. It's get used to a longboard first, because they are a lot of surfboard, and if you don't know how to ride them, you're just going to hurt someone.
Your 9.4 was a perfect little entry point.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, soft tops. I wanted to ask you about soft tops. You guys are making soft tops. I haven't seen or touched or ridden one of your soft tops, but they look quite different to the Costco or the INT style ones. What's your point of difference with soft tops?
We make them in a few different places. We have some that we make that are like injected foam. And so it's where we actually I shaped a board and we made a mold. I shaped a few boards and we made molds off of these finished shaped boards. And that allows you to really put in design detail into that mold. And so like one of them has a little channel bottom. You can put real fin boxes in them. They're obviously like not high performance because they're foamies, you know what I mean? But it's like a different mindset. There's the right day for that. Even if you surf well, obviously for beginners, they're great because you can surf them into the sand and they're just float easy, catch waves. They're kind of a little bit slower. So the pacing of them kind of matches the wave when you're just kind of learning to like ride the trim and ride the speed of the wave. So for people learning, it's great. But for people that know how to surf, it's like those days when it's closing out and it's on the sand, or you just want to go out and have fun and fool around. It's something different. So those ones we do, and those are made in the US, and there's just like injection foam molded soft tops. And then we also make some in Peru that are, by these surfers in Peru, which are pretty sick. They're kind of more they've got a foam core and they have stringers, and they're kind of like a slick bottom, like some of the soft tops you see, but they actually have like rail shape, and they have a better flex to them, and there's real fin boxes, and those are kind of like a cool in between, where if you're like a kid or you're someone who's like kind of progressing, it's a great board to kind of progress on because you can actually turn them and you can surf them pretty decently, and they're less expensive and all that. They're made in definitely a surf country by surfers, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, no, I've got a 9.6 INT that I absolutely love, and I've always
INTs go really good.
Yeah, and it lasted quite a while actually. It's still going actually. Surfed it every day when I was doing lessons for a long time, and then would just end up catching loads of waves on it. I love them so much because it's a boat, right? The 9.6 INT. It's a thick, big surfboard, but because I think because it flexes so much, you can ride it in lots of different types of waves and actually really turn it much easier than the same amount of surfboard if it was a stiff sort of is that why? And then you watch Jamie O'Brien surfs them at Pipe, like.
Oh, it's just funny. Sometimes it looks like that's the right board for there, which is insane. He's obviously a freak. To me, the point of it is like, it's a mindset thing. When you're riding those boards, you're kind of like, you're definitely not trying to win a contest when you're riding one of those. You're definitely going out there to have fun and kind of goof around, which is really good. This is a good reset for surfing, I think. Is you kind of, you can't try too hard. We just go out there and have fun. And it's much easier to kind of give a wave away to someone else. You're not going to be back paddling people to get waves when you're on those. And so it's a good mindset to reset and have fun. And that's why it's amazing how many sessions you have on those where you have a lot of fun because your mindset is in a good place and you're not overdoing it and you're not overcooking it, and you're better perspective.
Yeah. I guess you're not too worried about it cracking if you mistimed something close to the sand or the board hits you a little bit. It's not as bad. Yeah. No, I've always enjoyed the novelty of riding a soft top. And it's stoked to see you guys making some more refined looking ones.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is obviously it's still the point is that they're soft tops, but if we can kind of come at it from a different, like, there's no need for us to go to the same factory that Wavestorm or Catch Surf makes them and just put different graphics on a soft top. Those already exist, right? Like, we don't need to just have that's just another commodity. We don't need to make another one of those. But if we can make something that's a little unique or that offers something different from everything else that's out there, and gives a different feeling, and we explore a different thing, then cool, we'll try it out and we'll give it a go. So
cool. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. I got one more question I want to leave you with before we sign off, which is, what's your best and worst surf advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, I would say, I'm trying to think what the worst would be. I don't know. Best would definitely be, like we've been talking about, is like, I've said this before. This is kind of like my running theme a little bit, as far as like, choose the board, when you're going to decide what you're going to ride, like, think about if there was no one else on the beach and no one else was out in the water, like you were talking about that day when you're happy and you're the only one out, like, what would you actually ride? What do you actually really have the most fun surfing on? And that could be a shortboard, could be a high performance shortboard. That's the day you take it out because you're kind of kooky on it, but you want to get good. And that's what you want to get out of it. But to me, it's like pick the board that don't do it for the approval of others, like, choose what you really want to ride and what you really want to experience, and just go do that and go have fun. And I think you'll have the most fun. I'm trying to think, so like, maybe that you need to have an epoxy board for a wave pool. That's the worst advice. I don't think that's true. I don't know how applicable that is.
I think it's going to be more and more applicable very soon.
Well, I think, and maybe that goes in line with, I think it's in surfing, there shouldn't be hard and fast rules. Sometimes there's like these perceptions, and there's hard and fast rules, like, this is what you got to do and this is the way you got to do it. And I don't like, it's surfing. It doesn't have to, like, who says who? You don't have to do it that way.
Yeah, there's a famous surf video, I can't remember. Is it Kelly Slater? I think it just surfs a door.
Yeah.
You can surf anything, even an old door.
Exactly. I know, a table. I think he surfs a table flipped upside down.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and there's a video with Taj Bro and Chris Ward all surfing all sorts of objects.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no rules,
point, right? Like, why are we doing this? What are we doing this for? We want to have fun. Just be out in the ocean. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great to chat with you.
Cool. All right, simple as that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, good to meet you.
You too.